Okay, Molly.
Okay, Bucyrus City Council Joint Regular Committee meetings called to order at 6:00 p.m. Members present: Mark McKeever, Kevin Myers, Dan Wireball, Bruce Druka, myself, Doug Folk, Andrew Schott. Do we have any public participation? None? Okay, we'll move on to order of committee business. First is the Finance Committee. Call that to order at 6:00 p.m. The first thing is to repeal and replace ordinance number 13-2017, the Billet.
If you'll recall, we made changes to the manpower, and those like changes need to be made to the billet. The manpower specifies the positions that are all non-union and what each one of those positions, a minimum and maximum for those are. Well, the billet, which is 13-2017, the first one in your folder is the one that shows what all the positions are that are outside of the union positions. So under F, item F, section 1, we need to make the changes, the exact same changes that we made to the manpower, which are 2 head lifeguards, 7 lifeguards, 4 substitute lifeguards, and 2 concession workers.
It has 9, the parentheses around 9.
Yes, at one time, that one goes way back. When there used to be, I think it was, we had people that came in and actually ran the concession when it was all separate from the pool, whereas now it's been moved up there in the pool area, and they use some of the lifeguards to cover it, and they use, but this year they wanted to go to those 2 extra that are concession-only workers that could fill in for some of the time. So you discussed this with the service safety director, and he said the number that should go there is 2, which is the same as the manpower.
So, any discussion? Do I have a motion to replace the manpower for 2 head lifeguards, 7 lifeguards, 4 substitute lifeguards, and 2 concession workers?
It's replacing the billet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Okay, moving on to the various appropriations.
The auditor could not be with us this evening. What you have attached here is the appropriation sheet that will go along with the legislation, and also a copy of the sheet that you presented to you Tuesday evening about what the appropriations are. You may want to read through those again for everybody to understand those.
Okay. So we need an appropriation from unappropriated funds in Fund 101, General Security of Persons and Property, Police Department, Materials and Supplies in the amount of $2,000 for the Police Explorers competition expenses. A check had been received from the Community Foundation for this expense. We also need another appropriation from unappropriated funds in Fund 101, General Parks and Playgrounds, capital outlay in the amount of $4,800 for the purchase and planting of 40 sycamore trees within the city. A check from the Community Foundation for that amount had been received from the city's street tree fund. An appropriation is needed from unappropriated funds in Fund 285-2018 Crime Victims Assistant Grant, Victim Advocate, Personal Services in the amount of $1,299.75. This is the carryover balance from 2017. And an appropriation is needed from unappropriated funds in Fund 286-2018 Victims of Crime Act Grant, Victim Advocate, Personal Services in the amount of $233.87. This is the carryover balance from 2017.
For both of these items for the crime victims, those are on a different year than we are. They're, I think, November 1st to October 31st, or 30th, whichever it is. And so that's why these just need to be carried over into our current year, which is 2018.
So do I have a motion to approve the various appropriations?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Ian, second by Scott. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Okay, that's all we have for the Finance Committee. I will recess at 6:06 PM.
I'll call Health and Safety in order at 6:06 PM. First item is street closures for the car show. You have in front of you the letter dated March 13th, addressed to Bucyrus Council. You need to read the whole letter.
Just run through it.
Okay. Fraternal Lot 68 is respectfully requesting permission to close the following streets on Saturday, June 9th, 2018 for the Cruising with the Cops Testament Classic Car Show. The 100 block of East Warren from 7 a.m. till midnight for the food court. Sandusky Avenue from Mary to Oakwood from 12 p.m. till 12 a.m. midnight. We would also like to close Washington Square, the 100 blocks of East and West Mansfield, the 100 blocks of West Warren, 100 blocks of East and West Rensselaer, and the 100 block of East and West Charles from 12 p.m. till 12 a.m. midnight. Your attention and support of this matter would be greatly appreciated, as this is a great event for our city. Respectfully, Tracy Keegan, Treasurer of Repeal Lot 68. So as I understand, it's just a similar as last year, no changes. Any discussion?
I think maybe the only changes, are they moving the
Food court has been moved down a block, yeah.
Yeah, down one. And the other item with this is there's normally two pieces of legislation that go together. The one where we close the streets and one where the city has an agreement with the Bratwurst Festival of what cleaning services and that kind of thing that we normally provide. Last year when we passed that piece of legislation for 2017 and 2018. So we don't need that one this year. It's already in effect.
Okay. I make a motion to approve this year's request for the car show in the designated time and area.
Second. Motion by McKeever, second by Shaw. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item up is ambulance service. We've met a multitude of occasions here to discuss, and we have several options before us. Essentially, option of remain in the Central Joint Ambulance District, or to go out on our own and contract with a private company, with the city, working in concert with them through the fire department. At the last meeting, you'd asked for some more time to review everything. I think I'll ask at this point if you have any further questions that have come up in the time you've had to review it, Mr. Truca.
I'm just looking at the new proposal we just got today. Oh, yes, this is a new one.
This was from the new handed on Tuesday.
If I'd ask the mayor to explain this.
The proposal that we, I just wanted to, there was a lot of discussion during the meetings about, EMS, and actually what I realized we were discussing is something we weren't even proposing, as far as we're doing our own EMS and the cost of that. And, it kind of took us off track there a little bit, but I wanted to just put it in the form of a letter. So I'll just read our proposal is to put an EMS contract out to bid for the city of Bucyrus in 2018. It would be effective, January 1st. Length of the contract is to be discussed. The specifications would be put into the bid packet that would allow us to be the backup 911 ambulance for the city. Okay, so we're not proposing that we take on all EMS calls in the city, just the backup 911. And we would partner with an EMS provider. This would allow us to obtain much needed revenue to buy equipment Also would allow us to reduce our risk exposure that we currently have by being a member of the Central Joint Ambulance District, and I address those risks in the paper that I previously passed out. And I just want to add there, as my comment, it's not an easy decision to make, big change. You know, I have many friends that live in townships, you know, in fact, my best friends live outside the city limits even. But, you know, in coming to this decision, you know, I've realized that, you know, I was put here to lead the 12,000 citizens of this community, and I think what is best for us is to move towards this type of a service. Estimated revenues and expenses are based on a 3-year contract with 200 runs per year. We're taking the figure of $180, which is what Galleon, our neighbor, receives right now. So if we do that, if we do take that math and we do the 200 runs, we make $56,000 per year. And over 3 years, $168,000. The expenses, we have an optional, we do not have to buy an ambulance, that would be optional. We do have an ambulance that would work, that's fine. We do have levy funds that we can use for that if it's decided, or we can leave those. Equipment, approximately $10,000 for some upgrades and probably a little bit for fuel. We expect the net proceeds to be at least $100,000 over 3 years. Could be substantially more than that. So that's it in a nutshell, you know. So I think it's a very, it's a big step to leave, but it's a small step for us. That our guys are already down there. They're going on quite a few runs right now, and they're ready to go. And I think Chief Schwumley's here. He can address the readiness if you have questions for him. So. Or if you have questions about manpower, or I'd be happy to answer questions also.
When a new ambulance company comes into town, do they automatically assume control of the contracts with the local rest homes? I mean, where I'm getting at is every time a new contract comes around, the new provider that comes into the city, do they have the right to negotiate those things, or does it carry over from someone else?
They do. Those contracts with the independent care facilities, the hospitals, the nursing homes, things like that, are independent from the contract with the ambulance district. So the ambulance company, or any other ambulance company, if we had 5 ambulance companies that opened up shop here, all 5 of them would have the rights to go and compete for that private business. Now, having worked for all of them during, up until the current one, it was always the one that was providing the ambulance services who contracted. It really, other than on a couple of small occasions, have only been one service in town. When MedCorp stopped providing for the district, they stuck around and had a station out there in the Field Creamery for a while, and they eventually closed up shop and left.
So I guess what I'm asking is that does the Central Joint Ambulance Service then have first dibs at it, or do they continue with?
No, those contracts are up to each individual facility to contract with who they choose.
I guess where the next question is then, is the ambulance company that would come into the city, is there any guarantee that they are able to get those contracts, is what I'm getting at?
No, that's in between each company and each business. The ambulance district has no say.
So then what I was going for is, how do we know that, is there going to be a subsidy, or is there going to be no subsidy? I mean, what I'm wondering is that, okay, in our proposal here, it says that we can maybe make $56,000 a year But 56,000, then what does that necessarily mean? That doesn't mean, does that mean that,
That number's coming from the proposed amount of runs and
Right.
the estimated revenue of $280 per run. That's where that math adds up to what the anticipation is under the mayor's plan.
okay, but,
Now, to answer your question, there's no way to know with either plan if there is or is not going to be a subsidy until you put a request for bids out and get those returned. It's an unknown.
okay, that's what I was wondering. Is it known or unknown? Okay.
It's an unknown. Mr. Shaw?
You mentioned that you and Chief Swanley could address the manpower. I'd like to hear discussion.
What's the question then on?
Just addressing the manpower issue and the readiness issue for this.
Readiness is backup we already provide. Depending upon how much run increase or decrease there is, currently we do 336 EMS assists with life support currently. We did 10 transports last year, 1 write-off. It varies. So it's one of those that the staffing's already there, depending upon the circumstance, how we're currently staffed with the minimum of 3. If we continue that, there is a possibility of us having to page in more, potentially page in a couple times more. But there's also the possibility of adding working stuff around and adding a 4th person so that there wouldn't be that option. So that kind of alleviates that from happening as often. Generally, last year, I believe our numbers were that we had 22 structure fires. So when you overlap it compared to where a lot of manpower is needed on those types of situations and where you are doing EMS runs, the likelihoods are very slim. It's not going to happen that often of where you have to page.
And just to reiterate on the number, the mayor used a number of 200, which I find to be very accurate, because if you go off of historical data from life support in calendar year 2017, as you saw, there was 197 times there were 2 runs going on at the same time, 21 times there were 3 runs at the same time, and 1 time there were 4 runs at the same time, so you're looking at about 225 runs above and beyond the first, so I find that to be an accurate number.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
looking at your paper that you had presented. There are 197 here where there were 2 calls, and all of the ones on this page here, that only represents what happened with the city of
Within the city
Bucyrus.
limits of Bucyrus.
Within the
yes.
city limits of Bucyrus.
Yes. Mr. McKeever?
I think I already have mine.
I also have a prepared statement that I was wanting to address, Councilman, who also.
Go ahead. For those that don't know you, if you
Yeah,
introduce yourself.
Chad Schwinley, acting fire chief. I have been for about 11 months now. The decision we need to make tonight is whether or not we stay with the ambulance district. We all have wants and needs, but what we can afford is what ultimately drives what we get for emergency services. We want that brand new fire station. We want that new fire truck. We want 4 firefighters on every fire truck. We want 2 medics and an EMT on every ambulance. We want more officers on the street. We want 2 officers in every patrol car. We want an officer in every school. Just because we want doesn't mean that we get it. We do the best that we can with the funds that we have available. Gallia made the decision to put EMS in their fire department over 10 years ago. It upsets me that I hear that we don't want to be like Gallia. They provide a great service to their community. Last that I checked, Gallia has an ISO rating of 3. What is ours? A class 5. We can do better than this. Also back about the same time frame, Jefferson Township decided that they didn't want to pay for fire protection for their residents anymore and started their own fire department. this is what they decided was best for their residents. The point is that as emergency service providers, we all have to work together and do the best that we can with what we have to protect our citizens and those that pass through our communities. We will continue to help each other and those in need, regardless of the outcome of what happens with the funding of the Joint Ambulance District. As acting chief of the Bucyrus Fire Department, I am not for renewing the contract with the Joint Ambulance District.
Thank you, Chad. Any other questions or comments from anyone? State your name and address, please.
Dale Gamer, 845 Prospect. My question is, if the city ventures out on their own with another contract, would the city look at possibly making it a strictly 911 contract, or are they going to allow private runs from this private company?
We would allow, they would have to have one 911 vehicle at all times.
How many trucks you thinking, Mayor?
Oh, I don't know, that would, just the city residents, I'm guessing we would have one, we would do the backup, and then they would probably have another one for their transports. Right now, I think is there 4, correct me if I'm wrong, there's 4, right? So
It's
they're
contracted.
required to have 3, and then the 4th. So for the city, we then become the backup, so now we have 2, and then their 3rd. So go ahead.
My suggestion would be the city contracts strictly 911. Do not allow that private service to take non-emergency transports. Life support is proven the reason that you don't. They're going on tons of private runs and leaving the city unprotected. They're required to have 2 trucks at all times for the city and the county. We might have one and then turn around, fire department's getting paid for a backup right away. I think if you spend a little extra and you make it so it's strictly a 911 service, I think it's better for the residents. I completely agree with leaving the district for the city. It's gonna cost us a little bit of money, but we got guys that can back it up. And if you contract with another service to provide 1 truck, you got 2 trucks. And you're not running the risk of them going out on a private transport.
Yeah, and that's been discussed, whichever plan you look at, that's where the private companies are gonna make their money. So by allowing them to do that, you are then helping yourself secure a lower subsidy. So it's a double-edged sword, that's a delicate balancing act, and it's absolutely noticed and been discussed.
It's gonna take lots of policing.
Say it again.
It's gonna take lots of policing on somebody's part.
Well, and if you recall, those of you that were around back in the early 1990s when Stavchek was our provider, at one time they were required by the city to paint 2 ambulances a different color to just keep eyes on where they were. So I know that that's been a problem for some time now. Mr. Shaw.
Yeah, we had the question come up the other night on the issue of hard billing versus soft billing. Do we have any further ideas of what the official details will be there?
Mr. Chairman, can I address that? Yeah. Our feeling, and I know we would have to have your input on it, but our feeling is that city residents would be soft billed because they're already paying income taxes for the city, including a levy for safety forces levy. Those that might live outside the city, then you can make a decision on that whether you hard bill. And if people don't know what hard bill is, soft bill is let's say they have, let's start with that, they have a payment from their primary insurer, which might be Medicare. Medicare pays 80%, and there's a 20% copay that's left the responsibility of the beneficiary. So let's say they owe $50. If you soft bill, concept would be that you would bill them one time, and they pay you or they don't pay you. If they don't, we write it off. If you hard bill, then you bill some more, and then they finally go to collection. We would not do that to city residents. We have no intention of proposing that, and we would not be in favor of that. And that's, that $280 figure that we were giving you is what is figured in that. That's with soft billing.
And I'll verify with the law director, but I believe it is actually, that is the law, that you have to soft bill if you're receiving grant funds and government monies.
Yes, for an outsider, but as a city, we can go either way, because we're not talking about we're not an independent entity that's receiving grants or other funding. And if you look, there are some cities that do it either way.
Okay.
But, you know, we're in a unique position where we are specifically already taxing on that, on the safety forces, as Aaron pointed out. So it's a decision that you made either way, but definitely.
And the question was brought to me today, and I don't know the answer, so I'll ask, I'm not sure which one of you can properly answer this. The safety forces levy, is that for fire and police, or is that for fire, EMS, and police? Is there any distinction drawn between fire and EMS, fire or EMS, or one or the other?
There's not. I'd have to look at the exact language of what was on the ballot, but my recollection is it just says safety forces, so it would cover anything. But we can double check that.
I also had another point to make about the hard billing. We met with our Medicount, which is our billing service. They said the heartache and the grief that you get from hard billing somebody and the amount that you get in return, it's not worth it. You're talking, by the time you pay for the collection company and everything else, you're talking peanuts. What you get back on your return, and then you've also got a very ticked off community resident. It's not worth it.
I agree that as we shared, the number, the percentage on soft billing from Gallion's numbers from last year was 39%. The numbers we went from 2014 from when Lifestar was here, who was not soft billing, was also 39%. And Mr. Durbin shared at the ambulance board meeting last night that he's around 41% now. Is that what it was, Jason? I think it was 41%. And so those are all very similar. And so I think that gives validity to your point, Chad. You have something else?
No, I was just pointing out the Chad question.
Mr. Chair.
I don't know if I'm not understanding. So this proposal says we're the backup, which means we're not in the ambulance, central joint ambulance district. But if someone in our town needs an ambulance, the first ambulance out comes from the central joint ambulance?
No.
No. Essentially, the mayor's proposal is he wants to vacate our relationship with the Central Joint Ambulance District, at which point we would then ask for bids for a proposal. And his proposal there is to ask for one ambulance, whereas now the ambulance district asks for 3. So the city by themselves would be asking for 1. And then we, through our fire department, would be behind them, backing them up. So they would get the first run that comes in, and that's where we went with the numbers of, the 197 times. There were 2 runs going on at the same time. So we would get those 197 runs would be ours. And then where there were 3 and 4 going on at the same time, it's whoever can get to them the fastest.
And so that's, if we can find someone to do that, have we even looked at that?
Oh, we would put that out to bid.
So
We don't anticipate any.
So I feel like we're rolling the dice and throwing the ambulance district out and rolling the dice. Hopefully we can get someone. I mean, right now, the only person who wants to take this is
We had 2
won't
bids.
give us a bond.
We had 2 bids the last time.
Okay.
One was for a $600,000 subsidy, and one was for a 0 subsidy. Now, if you're and then it was given to the business with the 0 subsidy. Now, if you have the same 2 bidders last time, do you think the person who bid on the 0 subsidy is going to still bid a 0 subsidy? I don't think so. They're going to probably bid, knowing full well there's a $600,000 difference. If he's a smart businessman, which I know he is, that subsidy is going to be in the several $100,000 range. You see where I'm trying to come from? It just makes logical sense to me that the zero subsidy is, unless we get several more bidders involved, we're not going to have a zero subsidy if we stay in the CJAD. We have a much better chance of getting a zero subsidy if we're on our own. Now, we still may not get a zero subsidy, but we're going to have less exposure to it. When you say roll the dice, you're really rolling the dice by staying in there. The problem is, where are we going to come up with, let's say we go on our own and we don't like the bids that we get, if we go on our proposal here, we still have the option of rejecting those bids. If we're in the joint ambulance district and we don't like those bids, we have one vote. And we are going to be paying almost the majority of that subsidy. Right? And that's going to have to come from somewhere. The general fund is very tight, as you know, and there's going to have to be some changes made. So if that happens, we're exposing ourselves to our reduction in some of our safety forces, because that's the majority of the expenses in the general fund. The general government has got no waste of it.
So if we go back to the last census data, if we remain in the ambulance district and there's a subsidy, we would be responsible for 46%, versus if there's a subsidy in the city, we're responsible for 100%, albeit those numbers may be different from one another.
I understand,
Okay.
but here's the plan, and this is the part that bothers me. The plan, here's the plan, March 19th, 2 weeks before they want their answer. I don't know, it seems like we're rushing into it. I'm not comfortable, so. And I know that's a gamble too, but I thought we were planning this,
We have been planning this.
since August.
No, we've been planning this a long
August
time.
is when you wrote your letter and said you will
No.
not join the ambulance district.
Well, we've been discussing this 3 years ago when
I know.
when this current contractor couldn't sign a performance bond. So we've been hashing out possibilities, probabilities, what ifs for 3 years. And we've been doing it ongoing. And the reason it's taken so long is because it is a huge decision. None of us wanted to leave this district. But it's, there's, as somebody said, there's not many good options in the whole thing. There's going to be things that aren't going to be perfect in it. But what this allows us to do is control our own destiny as a city.
Chad?
Yeah, and that was, the mayor did touch on it. Back when when this first contract was first signed, and there was an issue with the performance bond, we as a department went out to many different departments and looked at what our different options would be to how we would staff and what we would need and different things. And, we looked at those, and it's been an ongoing thing for the past 3 years, but the big holdup has been the administration does care about what happens out in the townships. And it's been a big hurdle to overcome that, we don't feel like we want to leave them out hanging, but we've got to look out for what's best for our own residents and our own taxpayers. Because if we sign with the ambulance district, we're stuck. We have no more negotiating powers to determine what we can do to offset that. I don't want to go backwards as a department. The police department doesn't want to go backwards as a department. We don't have the funding that somebody's funds are going to have to be cut to pay for a subsidy that would be from the ambulance district. I don't want to see that happen.
Yeah, and you can see, you've been to the meetings, you can see the pressure that we're under. Police department asked for more staffing. Fire department's been to meetings, asked for more staffing. not less staffing. So the decisions that you make, you need to keep those in mind. And then I guess it's how we came to our decision, when it came down to, we have to watch out for the 12,000 residents. Whether we have relatives that live out in the townships, and people choose to live outside the city. And if if you choose to live outside the city, or with your friends, we have many friends that live out there, you don't have the same services as you have in town. It's just a fact. If you choose to live outside the city, you choose to live away from a 24/7 fire department. You choose to live away from a fully staffed police department that could be there in 5 minutes. You choose to live away from an ambulance that could, be there in 5 or 7 minutes. So those are choices you make. Now, we tried to work with the townships, and Jason's, that was rejected. He mentioned, well, I understand that, but I think we would be interested in staying in there if we could get a subsidy from the townships. If you look at Polk Township, right outside of Galleon, they're paying the city of Galleon $200,000 a year for fire and EMS service as a subsidy. $200,000 a year. For 2,000 residents, $100 a resident for fire and EMS. We were looking just to we asked for like $14, I think, per resident to be able to stay in the district and be the second backup in the townships. We weren't asking, I didn't think we were asking for much. The townships are going to have to go out and contract with somebody, the subsidy is going to be a lot higher. And at the same time, most of the townships already have an EMS levy in there. They have funding coming in. And it's all at different rates. It's all public information. There's funds there. So our option for the townships was, okay, you're getting a zero subsidy because of us. We'll stay in it. You help subsidize this service for us. We weren't asking that much, I didn't think, and we got turned down. So which forced us to this next decision. The decision was then to be the backup. Eventually, whether it's a year or 3 years or whatever, we'd like to, like 99% of all cities in the state, we'd like to do our own. They do it because it's a moneymaker.
And I will point out that the current contract with the ambulance district does give the private company the right to subcontract with another provider at any time. So that is something that they just mentioned last night that they did intend on leaving in. So that is something just to have in your knowledge, right? President?
Yes, I had a couple questions for you, Chief. Are all the firefighters certified to go out with the ambulance?
Yes, but not everybody's a medic.
Okay, some are.
Just EMTs.
Okay, so there's a different classification of the people that can be on an ambulance.
Right.
Okay, and my second question is, we have 3 firefighter platoons, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and we have a minimum
Minimum staffing right now is currently 3.
of 3. And so, would there be changes that would need to be made in order to be able to have the required number of people on station at all times?
There's changes that can be made.
Pardon me?
There's changes that can be made.
Okay.
Just to quantify for those not understanding the difference between a paramedic and an EMT. Advanced life support is where you see the cardiac monitors, IVs, pharmacology, intervention with drugs and things. Those are things that paramedics can do. The EMTs are trained for what's BLS, basic life support, splinting of injuries, oxygen administration, things like that. And so that's where the difference lies. We here in town have had advanced life support since Stop Check first came in 1988-89 timeframe. Before that, the Bird ambulance, and then Percy ambulance. Before that, we were basic life support.
So are there currently enough paramedics on force to staff around the clock?
Chad, I'll defer that one to you.
Yes, like I said, there's a potential that we might need to change a couple things around, but we can definitely provide at least one ALS ambulance at all times. We've got one guy retiring, which is at the end of the month that we'll be replacing, and that will be getting us another medic, which will take us up to 8.
So I want to just clarify and point out at least one. Sometimes we could provide 2 ALS crews.
Majority of the time, it would actually probably be 2.
Okay. Because the number I'm hung up on is the 21 times last year that there were 3 calls at one time. I want to make sure that we are able, the last thing I want is one of those 21 calls to be something serious. Hey, maybe it's not. Maybe it's just a simple, cut finger that isn't emergent, and the person, if they have to wait 20 minutes, can do that. But I'm afraid to roll the dice if we're looking at the, the opportunity there that of those 21 times, that it could be something serious, and it could be me, or anybody that lives in the city. And that worries me, so that's why I wanted to have you kind of quantify that.
One more question. The, Chief, one of the things that we have right now is if we drop down below the 3 people that are, or 4 people that are supposed to be on call for this, you do an all-call for anybody available to come in? If we have a fire?
If there's multiple runs and stuff, fires, yes. If there's a working structure fire, it's an automatic all page.
Okay, but now if this comes down to where we have two of our firefighters going out with the ambulance, as the second ambulance, then that leaves 2 there, correct?
Correct.
And so would we have to then call somebody in order to cover?
No. It's kind of one of those it's the risk versus reward. You want to be paging somebody, calling people in every time that the ambulance went out. And it's more or less it's operating the same way the galleon does. Yeah, occasionally you might get caught, but the chances are slim. And it's the same thing. It can happen to us right now. It's the exact same thing. We've had times where there's 2 fires at the exact same time. It's the how it rolls. If it's going to happen, it can happen.
Okay, thank you.
So, I got one again. So, right now, there's 3 ambulances down at,
According to the contract, 3 ambulances, 2 of which must be used only for 911 calls, and a third which may be used for private transport.
and then for the 4th.
In essence, yes.
And we're gonna cut that down to 2.
That's the way I understand it.
Okay.
They're running 3 on private transports now at a time.
Yeah,
Leaving
and
one
I
in the
guess,
city.
I guess what I wanted to point out when you're saying that, okay, they're supposed to have, you say they've got 3 ambulances down there now that are supposed to be dedicated to 2 dedicated to 911. Last week we had to take a call that there was no emergency runs within an hour of this run, and there was no emergency ambulance inside the city limits. We were up here at the station, didn't know that there was a second run going, or didn't know that there was no ambulances available, because that's the main problem that we have with the services, because we don't know where they're at. We get a second tone from the sheriff's office because it was just for a low blood sugar. It's not one that we always run with them on. There's a list of runs that we run with them on. It's one that we would go on standby. Next thing we know, we're in the mayor's office. Our tone goes off again for the same address. Why is that? Well, we haven't had no response from life support. We left immediately to take care of the emergency or the incident, and a couple minutes later, life support showed up. I'm not here to bash on them guys, but they're out there to make a buck. We're here to provide citizens with proper care, and they're our main concern, not the almighty dollar.
That's my main concern, that we're gonna provide enough service for our citizens if we do this. If we do this plan that we're not sure about this and we're not sure about that, and that's still in question, if we're gonna provide them with the service. That's my only problem. I'm not opposed to the fire department running an ambulance service. I think it's a great idea, you know? I think we should, but can we do it January 1st, 2019?
We're doing it now. We're already doing it.
For what they're proposing, we're already doing now.
I'll have to take your word for it, I guess.
You can ask the other firefighters there too, they can do it.
I guess
I would like to ask the other firefighters, but go ahead.
Mr. Shock.
I guess I have a little bit of concern here because, you know, we did just hear the current support team being bashed. And I think that we're talking about, for the most part at this point, backing them up as the future service provider.
Not necessarily.
Okay, but I don't know that we have a guarantee of this. That's our current zero subsidy provider.
Can I address that?
We didn't have another option without a subsidy.
Well, here's a good thing, you've got another option, you know. First of all, if they do give us a zero subsidy, we will insist on a performance bond, which the ambulance board has not. We would insist on it. You will have the option to reviewing all the bids. If you don't like any of the bids, we can reject all the bids. And then we can make a decision to do 911, all of the 911. Still have that option under our control. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's been one of my big concerns all along is that the joint ambulance district has not enforced the requirements on
That's because,
life support team.
yeah, we don't have the power there.
And we just heard
Yeah.
about it. So,
Mr. Chairman, okay. I think the chief hit upon it, you know, we would have local control. These are folks that work for us.
Jason Long, if you just identify your position, you had a question.
President of the Joint Ambulance District. But on the performance bond, we do require that. They refused to get it. And then mid-contract, because they did not have it, we went out to bid again to find a provider that would have one, and they were our only bidder. So at that point, we were stuck until the end of this contract. We had nothing to bank on. It's either no provider or one without. So the new contract coming out will definitely have that in it, and it will be required.
And I can attest that that was discussed at the meeting last night, that they do take that seriously. Mr. Wireball, you said you wanted to ask some questions.
I would like to, are any firefighters here willing to speak or not? I can understand if you're not, but I would like to give you the opportunity. Okay.
Mark.
You're requesting us to do something, and you have still no guarantee on what it would cost us for contracting with another ambulance service. Am I correct?
Both proposals have an unknown applicable cost. Yes.
So, per se, we could still get stuck with a $150,000 bond, correct?
Subsidy.
I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Let me correct it, subsidy. If we go by ourselves. If we go with the CJAD, if the bond's $300,000, or subsidy, I'm sorry, let me say it correct, it'd be approximately $138,000. I don't, we're already $350,000 in the hole. We ran a deficit of $350,000. We're not in the red. We are still in the black. Let me rephrase that. But I just don't know how we can, I don't see how we can afford this. And I'm not saying not to, that I'm dead set against us ever trying to do this. I don't know.
Mr. Allen.
And it's not my call one way or the other, but one of the things to consider with respect to the subsidy, and whether there's a subsidy, an in-house subsidy or a CJAD subsidy. If there is a CJAD subsidy, we're locked in and we're paying it. If we go in-house and there's a subsidy, we have the option to rebid, or we have the option to take that, what would be a required subsidy, and invest it in-house in additional manpower and equipment to do it without an ambulance provider. So one path, if there is a subsidy, requires we're in and we're paying it. The other path still gives us options. And I'd note that with respect to the subsidy and the performance bonds, if it is bid, it was bid once before with the performance bond requirement, and as you heard, there was no bidders. So they may require a performance bond in the future, but there may not be any bidders at that. And when it was bid last with the performance bond, it was bid, the only bid that had a performance bond was a significant subsidy. So, it's an issue of, if you're gonna be spending money, if the fear is that we're gonna be spending money, one way of spending money is where we have control to either rebid or determine if we're gonna spend that money on an internal investment, or whether we're just gonna be spending that money and turning it into the CJAD. And I think if we just make the worst case scenario plan, that there's gonna be a $100,000 subsidy that we're gonna have to pay, one way or the other. One way is we have the control over how that is and whether or not we have any options to rebid, or whether we invest that internally, and the other is it's out of our hands, we just write a check.
I wanted to add one thing to that, is that the ambulance board, if they go out for bid and they get a bid with a real high subsidy, they have the option of rejecting it too, correct?
Absolutely.
You can reject it.
Our
So
budget is reflected on yours. We don't have the amount of people in the larger budget, but percentage-wise, we're gonna be in the same position.
But to a lesser extent, because I've been talking with different people and using the idea that if it's a $100,000 subsidy that somebody comes up with and you accept that bid, then the city of Bucyrus will be paying approximately $46,000 of it. So then that leaves $54,000 divided. Granted, there's a formula that fits in there, but it's divided 15 ways. So we're looking at $3,000 a township. There's a heck of a difference between a township taking on $3,000 and the city of Bucyrus taking on $46,000.
It's per capita, it's
Per capita.
kind of a wash. We've got less people and less taxpayers.
I mean, your entire township budget for the year is what, approximately $40,000?
Ours is more than that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, have you identified
I'm
yourself?
sorry,
We need that.
I'm J.D. Ward, Bucyrus Township, I
Okay,
sit
thank you.
on CJAD board.
Percentage-wise, it's the same for everybody, just per capita.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to make a final statement. So, the future of ambulance service in the city of Bucyrus, it rests in the fire department. Okay? It's got to happen financially, because it adds money to the bottom line. It allows us control, professional control. It allows us money we can fund safety forces. And we're not breaking new ground here. Look around the state. Look at our own county. Look at Crestland. Look at Gallion. They're doing it. You know, I'm saying, let's take this first step. You're never going to get to the step which we're going to need to get to. We lost, I showed you the figures, we lost $600,000 in tax revenue each year, counting between 2010 and 2017. That's 10%. That's a substantial drop in revenue. One way to make it up is to start providing our own EMS service. It'll take some pressure off it. Whoever sits in this chair is going to have to address this. Whether you address it now or you address it in 3 years, it's got to come. A lot of our residents out there are making $10 to $12 an hour. You know, why is it fair for us to ask those folks that are living below poverty level to subsidize people that choose not to live in our city to pay that 2% income tax? It's not, we cannot justify that. As I say, we were put in office to do the best thing for the 12,000 residents of this committee. And I think we've made a clear statement. We need to move to a full-time EMS service. I don't think anyone's prepared to do it right now. This gives us, if we enter into a 3-year contract, it gives us the chance to see how it goes. If you stay in the ambulance district, if you so choose to do that, you're continuing to subsidize non-voters. Number 2, losing control. Number 3, risking a subsidy that most likely would be much lower if we went on our own. That's all I want to say.
So as I understand it, in 2001, a resolution was passed that the city entered into an agreement to be a member of the Central Joint Ambulance District. So our choices at this point are to rescind that resolution essentially, or pass a new resolution that replaces that resolution, or to just choose to remain in. Are we prepared to make a decision?
Just one step further, whatever your decision is tonight from the committee, will go to full council on Tuesday night, because full council will vote on this as to whether the city stays with the Central Joint Ambulance District or decides to go on its own. We can prepare it. If you want to get the feelings of your members of your committee tonight, that's perfectly legitimate. And but one way or another, I'm going to need a request for legislation in order to complete all the steps Tuesday evening, not next Tuesday, the following.
So do we need a vote this evening?
She's saying we need to ask Dan, Monica.
No, she said of our committee.
No, she said get feedback from the other 3 since it's going to council. What are their thoughts before we make a resolution? Because it's going to vote. That's what I'm going to say. I'd like to know the other 3 members' opinions on what they think before we go on, because.
But it will go to full council for the final vote.
Whichever decision we make. I just want to see what the other 3.
Mr. Pope.
I'm with Mr. Wireball. I want to hear from these guys sitting out here in this crowd. So I'm sitting here watching everybody the whole time, and I'm seeing different facial expressions and things like that. I'm just kind of curious where we're all at on this, because I would like to know that we're all on the same page if this is the idea we're going to do. But I'll probably get that answer still.
The silence is death.
I can't give you an answer because I can't get that answer.
I don't want to chime in section. Reference to I'm Tracy King with Bucyrus Police Department. Reference to the safety forces levy, I don't think it was really answered over here when you asked Mr. Radley to get the answer. You know, when you said something about the safety forces levy, and that safety forces levy was put into place as police and fire. Nothing about it. He says, oh, it's probably just a box checked. I'm sure it's fire department, police department. That needs to be checked into instead of him saying, I don't know, I believe it was that way. That's not an answer. That needs to be addressed.
Thank you. Ms. Sack?
I mean, I agree. I would like to make sure that the people that are going to be doing these runs are on the same page.
I've heard your opinion, but I think I'll let you.
Yeah, well, I had a couple more things to say. You know, we've heard control, you know, we want to take control. And And we've had 3 years or more that we've been talking about this, trying to take control of this. And now, at the 11th hour, we have to make a decision. I think, and it's nobody's fault, but 3 years ago, we should have been planning this. And I know we have been talking, but I'm feeling rushed. And the other thing was about the non-voters, the people living out in the townships. I do believe they come to Walmart. They probably use a Vita. They probably use the physicians in town. So, yeah, we have to represent the 12,000 people in Bucyrus, but if we make the rest of the county outcasts, we're going to be a little island here, so, and that's not going to help us either, so. I think the fire department should run the EMS, but I think not to sacrifice. I feel we're taking a big gamble at this point doing it this way, so I think we should work towards that, but not to jump into it at this point. That's my opinion.
I'm on the same page with Dan. I'm not saying to close the door on it because, eventually we can do it, but I also think that we ought to work with the CJAD to say, hey, we all can go together on this, and we be the provider. Somehow, we'd have to figure out costs and how they could contribute to do, not for us, 12,000 to pick up the whole bill for all of them. No, we gotta find a way. And if we do this, I think that possibly 3 years from now, we can't just say, okay, it's done. We'll forget about it. No, we gotta keep going now. We need to get where we work with the townships and the trustees who are, and I don't know, I haven't talked to any of them other than last night was the first night I was there at ambulance district meeting. I think we have to have meetings with all the trustees who are representing the townships. They need to come, and us, 7, administration, fire, need to come, and we need to talk and come up with figures and facts and come up with a resolution to do this a cost-effective way without having to hire an outside service that we'd have to come up with money and hand it to them and have no control over it. So that's my opinion.
Mr. Tree, anything further?
No, we're such a small county in the first place. Yeah, I think firemen would probably be a good ambulance service. I don't doubt that, but, okay, we're contributing to economic development. We're trying to sell water. We're trying to be a good neighbor. Then we're gonna turn around and throw it all out the window. We're all in it together. I mean, we're a small county. We're not supposed to be an island.
42,000 people.
Mr. Shaw, anything?
I think it's a difficult decision. I think that I'm kind of in agreement with Mark, and that I feel like the best solution would be for Bucyrus to be in the lead as the provider and provide for the entire district.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of opinions and egos involved, and quite honestly, I think the quality is suffering as a result of a lack of looking at quality as the first priority. And I really believe that would be the best case scenario, to have Bucyrus in the lead, eliminate the outside providers and eliminate this discussion every 3 years of what is our subsidy gonna be? How much are we gonna have to pony up with for all the townships as well as the city to pay this unknown sum of money? It's gonna be a mystery in 3 years from now if we stay within the district, or if we contract with a provider for just the city. So either one of these solutions, we have the same problem again, well, however long, if we take the new plan here for the city only, I don't know how long that contract would have to be.
Could be any length of the
Could
city.
be any length of time, but then, the district contract's a 3-year deal. So you're gonna be facing the same argument in 3 years from now. And to me, it's unfortunate that, the quality isn't the thing that we're looking at first, and, allowing to provide the best option to be the leader in this scenario and serve the whole district. But that would require better cooperation, and that hasn't happened. So now we're left with 2 less than the best choices. So at this point, I'm trying to decide which is the least bad choice. So I'm still thinking that over, but no final answer right now.
I don't dislike the mayor's plan. I think it's a good plan to get us to where we want to go. My issue with it is that I think, like Mr. Wireball alluded to, it's kind of thrown together and given to us to make decisions without 100% of the information. And then we have to make a decision. We're under a time constraint to make a decision. And where that puts us is, as several of you alluded to, I also see that if we could all sit down at the table together and come up with a comprehensive plan that includes financing the entire project, that includes encompassing the townships and the cities together. I think that's a win-win for everybody. And I don't like the thought of isolating ourselves from the townships as well. I agree. I think those people that live in the townships, whether they choose to or not, they do come to our city and spend money at our stores, at our healthcare facilities, at our restaurants. And I think we do need to be cognizant of that as well.
I would like a motion to send it to full council for a vote.
I so move that we send it to the full council.
I have a motion from Bruce and a second from Mark to send this to full council for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. So motion carried, and we'll refer that to full council. If there's
It'll be on April 3rd.
April 3rd.
So what are we gonna vote on?
Whether we stay or we.
Council voting on.
Whether we stay in the ambulance district or whether we leave the ambulance district.
Right. So I guess by us making a motion, at least we're open-minded enough to let everyone else have the same.
Yeah, it gives the opportunity for you to talk to more people in the community. It gives you the opportunity to, review all this. This has been a lot of material to absorb, and gives you the opportunity to talk with different people, even talk with different communities. I'm sure that if you took the time and want to take the effort to talk to Marion or some of the other cities around us and how they're handling it, to do some investigation for that. If you'd like us as a council office to do it, we'll gladly reach out and get that to you. But we are under the restriction of a date, and we have to go with that.
There's nothing else to be brought before Health and Safety Committee. I'll recess at 7 to 9 p.m.
Okay. I'll start at 7:09 p.m. Okay, as you see before you, we're talking about the conditional use for multi-family housing in R3 districts. You have a map showing you our R3 districts, which is all mostly in green. There are some R2s in there also, but mostly the green area on the map is the R3 districts. This is stemming from the properties on 902, 904, 906, A through C on Whetstone Street. Those are the apartments adjacent to the south side of the main entrance of the fairgrounds, off of Whetstone Street. The Planning Commission has approved this to be allowed to come to council. They recommended with the stipulations basically to make it on a case-by-case basis. It's not a resolution to just open it up to anybody can have multiple family home housing in the R3 district. That it's just like our downtown business district on the outside seating and dining. It's a case-by-case basis. So, and we have to, if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Chairman. Sorry, President. This is to open it up. We have to make legislation to have a public hearing on this. Otherwise, if we do not, it dies in council, in committee.
You might want to share what the Planning Commission recommended as minimum conditions to do this.
Right. Okay, I'll just read the entire letter. The Bucyrus City Planning Commission met on Monday, February 12th, in order to review a zoning amendment application submitted by Mr. Wes Howe, owner of said property. Mr. Howe's property fell into discontinuance after being vacant for longer than 2 years, causing it to lose its grandfathering in the urban neighborhood residential zoning district R3. In order to return to the property as to a usable state in the district, the application was seeking to allow apartment housing in the R3 district. Zoning Administrator John Rostash felt the application was an opportunity to address this idea to create a conditional use allowing for multi-family housing in R3 district. Mr. Rostrash presented the reasons he felt such a use would be beneficial to said zoning districts and the city as a whole, including one, to provide for the revitalization and restoration of blighted apartments that have fallen into discontinuance within the R3 district, to encourage development of housing near the downtown business district, thereby supporting the local economy. 3, to encourage private reinvestment and revitalization that offers a diversity of housing choices, as is the purpose of the R3 district, to accommodate the changing market trends. Those trends are driven by the economic demographic of the millennial generation and their housing expectations. The Planning Commission recommended the following minimum conditions to be included to the proposed amendment to section 1163.04 of the Bucyrus Codified Ordinance, allowing multi-family housing in the urban neighborhood residential zoning district, R3. First one, establish a build to front property line. This line would be average front property line of homes located in the block containing the proposed development. Number 2, constant height requirement. The required height would be no greater than plus or minus 25% of the average height of homes located in a block containing proposed development. Side yard requirement. The side yard requirement should be similar to that of a common wall 2-family home of 6 feet. And then off-street parking in areas where there is no on-street parking. 2 off-street parking spaces shall be provided for each unit in areas of the R3 district where on-street parking is provided. The parking requirement shall be reduced according to the following table. And as you read the table here, number of units 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Number of required spaces is 3, 4, 6, 8, 9 respectively. And if it's greater than 6%, 75% of the off-street requirement rounded to the nearest whole number. In the case where an existing structure is to be modified to accommodate multifamily housing, the applicant shall submit engineered drawings stamped by a professional engineer or architect. The plan shall clearly indicate fire protection between the units with a minimum of 2-hour fire resistant rate. So, any questions? Okay, Mike, Bruce, yes.
So, in R3 area, it's only, 4 feet on a single-family home, that's will be 6 feet because it's a common wall. I was just curious, isn't it 4 feet side yard?
Side yard shall be similar to that of a common wall 2-family,
Right.
which is 6 feet.
I was just curious, I just was asking a question, that's all.
Sure.
Okay, I don't have a problem with that. I was just asking, a single-family home they have, what's the side yard setback?
I don't remember. Is it 3?
Yeah, I was thinking it was 4.
Mine isn't 3.
All right,
Inches.
I guess it's immaterial, so I just, never mind. I don't have a problem. That's fine.
And as most of you may see, most of that green area, this is the downtown business district here in white, which is Sandusky Street from, if I get it right, if I don't say it wrong. I do believe that's Charles to the river is the downtown business district, that whole area in white. So, and everything in green except there's some little areas in here that are R2, but everything else mostly in the green is R3 district. So,
Mr. Chairman?
yes.
I do believe we've had some, people have purchased some homes in the R3 district, and all the older homes that are the bigger homes, and have wanted to go in and turn them into, say, an upstairs and a downstairs apartment. And under the current zoning, that's not allowed. So that's why, one of the other reasons why this is, they decided to put this forward to the entire R3 district, that would make that then allowable. I mean, per plans, but I mean, it's not just anyone, you can't just go in and do it, you gotta get the approval to do it, that there is room to do it.
And like it states, it's a conditional basis. You have to approach the BZA to get the conditional use.
So then, we need to make draft legislation and set a public hearing date out of this committee, correct?
That is
Yes.
Do we need a motion to do so?
Well, yeah, and we have to consider the fact that they have to give the law director's office time to get the draft legislation up, because we have to post that over in the zoning window for the entire 30 days that it needs to be posted for, so.
Council clerk set
we're
the date
looking-
of the hearing.
Pardon me?
Council clerk set the date of the hearing.
How does that work?
Or you, we don't have to decide that tonight, so.
No, we don't decide. He has to have time to draw it up and have it, and then you bring that to us at council, correct? So he could bring it to us on April 3rd, possibly. Maybe.
Probably not.
Would that
Probably
be-
not, because I'm out of town a little bit next week.
Well, that's what I'm asking. So more like
17th is not a problem.
by April 17th?
Yeah, that's our second meeting.
So as you approve that as the draft legislation, then it gets posted, and then it'll go 30 days beyond that, the April 17th date.
Yeah, once we get it.
Yes.
So,
And it'll be duly publicized.
Monica, you have any questions? Okay.
I had,
Yeah, Dan.
some time ago, I suggested that we expand the neighborhood business district. And wouldn't that be, I mean, could you throw all that in together, or would that be an issue? Because we haven't moved on that yet. And we're talking about people who would want to put a business in a large house just outside of the neighborhood business, then they don't have to come back every time and
It would need to be two different pieces of legislation, but, I mean, you can do it at one
Hearing.
public hearing.
One hearing time, if you would like to send this back to the planning commission and ask them to consider neighborhood business also.
that should be in planning, because I suggested that last year.
And my only, I don't disagree, but my only concern with that would be slowing this one down, because we do, what this is all premised on is obviously those apartments over on West Elm. I mean, this is something for general applicability, but that's the,
That would still.
that's the thing that's, we're thinking about to move faster on. Because he's sitting there with, he's got some investment in him, but
Yes.
he can't finish them, because right now it'd be a non-conforming use, so.
He had, and the reason the planning commission okayed this for this gentleman, he has made substantial improvements to those places. He has made them secured, he has cleaned them up, but he can't do any more until, he can't do any more until we okay this, so.
I mean, we can still send that back to the
Well,
planning commission
that's
if you'd
fine.
like to do that.
I guess I wasn't thinking of that, but I was just thinking, we have these things, and first of all, just to my mind, we had 3 of them, like, within a couple of years.
You're right across the street.
Well, yeah, we had that, we had down at the hardware store, and the guy wanted to start a real estate place over here, and we're all throwing all these out, and let's just do it and get it over with. But at some point, we can discuss that, but yes, I think.
We could, if you want to make a motion to that, we'll take them, send
Well, I mean,
them.
it's in committee, we'll work on it when we get to
Okay.
it, but something like that.
Okay.
See
Up
how.
to you.
All right, if there's any no public input, I'm gonna ask for a motion.
To request the draft legislation.
Yes.
I'll move the request draft legislation.
Second.
Okay, any questions? If not, all those in favor of requesting draft legislation to allow multifamily housing in R3 district for a public hearing, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
And we'll expect that on April the 17th, and it'd be the 19th then
That would be public.
that you would have it in committee.
Oh. Or could we have it in committee?
I'll probably have it for committee on the 8th.
Could we-
Or on the-
Okay, we'll see how we work
Yeah,
that.
if I can get it, I'll try to have it on for committee on the 5th, not the 8th.
Okay. All right. All right, we'll move on to the next. Conditional use of tower construction in GB and G1 districts, general business and general industry. And we received a letter requesting this on Tuesday from Wavelength. It was dated March 19th. I'll read it for the public who's here. Dear Bucyrus City Council, I would like to ask the council please consider changing their zoning laws to allow towers as a conditional use in the commercial zoning districts of general business and general industry, and also remove the required clearance of 100% free fall radius around towers. An example of why a tower shouldn't need the 100% fall radius clearance around it is the Verizon tower behind City Hall. The current zoning law pertaining to towers too is antiquated and outdated, and some of the wording dates back to when AM radio towers were the only form of radio communication. In today's ever-evolving technological world, these changes to the current zoning laws pertaining to the towers should keep Bucyrus up with the times in the wireless world we now live in. Thank you, Kurt Fankhauser, owner of Wavelength Communications. So, here's another request for a public hearing.
No, this goes to the planning commission first.
Right,
Right. We need to start our
right.
public hearing timeline, and that begins here with us putting it to the planning commission,
That's right.
and then we'll hear back from them. And then it continues on within your committee.
Okay. So anybody have any questions before we go to planning?
Okay?
Okay.
Need a motion?
I need a motion.
I move that we go ahead and send this tower construction for general business and general industrial areas to the planning commission.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passed.
Okay, we'll get the letter together and get it sent to them.
So if there's nothing else, I adjourn at 7:27.
Okay, let's start the Public Lands Buildings Committee at 7:27. And City Tower Use Agreement. Well, this is one that's been up in the air for a while too, and I hope that everyone is in agreement with this. Could I ask Mr. Fankhauser to speak? I would like to know if you are in agreement with this.
The only thing that I had wanted changed was the termination wording. I'd like to see that it would take a vote by council to terminate, because I just keep thinking about like the Good Eats property where they tried to eminent domain it, and council didn't even know it was going on. And what worries me is if this thing gets signed, the administration could turn right around and send me a letter saying, hey, vacate the towers in 6 months. So I'd like, it'd make me sleep better at night if I knew that council had to vote on it.
Yeah, and I you know.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
it is an administrative function.
that's
It
what
is
it's-
not a function of city council to
I-
do that.
I
We
understand.
present legislation, that is all we do.
It is, and she's right, and that's what I was trying to say in a nice way, but, so what you have now is, April 19th, they can tell you to get off the towers. So, at least this you have 6 months, and they're gonna go out to bid, and this is just a contract to continue what you're doing. This Am I correct? This is not another 5-year lease or anything like that?
No, it's,
This is just continuing,
it's trying to just maintain status quo, while council figures out what we're gonna do with the towers.
and that was my intent, was to get you 6 months and the administration 6 months to come up with something to do this.
And Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just to be clear, it's 6 months' notice, should, leaving the tower be required.
Right.
It's unlimited in duration.
Right.
Which, is questionable, but it is unlimited in duration, just with a 6-month notice. So this agreement, in all reality, could go on in perpetuity.
Right. Right, and that's what I was trying to achieve when we first started this, is to give you the time, your business the time, to do something else if we had a different bid or something. So, I understand where you're coming from about that, but it is an administrative function. It's not, they can't be running back to us every time they want to do something, or we never get anything done. So, can you live with that?
I guess I can live with it for 6 months.
All right, I appreciate you. I appreciate you doing that. So then, since I feel as chairman feel that they're in agreement, I would like a motion to whatever,
I got a
do whatever we
question.
gotta do next, or whatever.
We don't have to do
Oh,
anything.
we don't have to do anything.
Need a resolution authorizing.
We need a resolution for
Yeah, I was
services,
gonna-
okay?
To Kurt's question about the termination,
Yes.
say that the administration decides to terminate and we don't agree with it, can we overturn your decision?
So that'd be a legal question.
But, I guess that's why I'm posing this question, I guess. I mean, maybe that'll help set Kurt a little bit more at ease, that in a sense, I guess, if council doesn't agree with it, then we can.
Well, hopefully by then we have our.
I understand that. I'm just
I mean,
trying to-
we will by then have what we see happening with it.
Right.
And all of that will be, and we're assuming, I think, that he would be one of the people, wanting to use them at that point in time.
And I guess the answer to your question is, any other use on the towers would require approval by public rental buildings and something like this body. So it's not an exact answer to your question, but yeah, I mean, the trigger for termination is non-payment of rent or other problem, or new user, and new user would require this body's involvement, so.
So then we need a motion for the resolution.
So yes, I do need a motion for a resolution.
I make a motion for a resolution.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, now I have one quick thing, because I know we want to get out of here. I don't know how to. The Pines Reservoir, the dam inspection, what do you know on that?
Nothing, what do you know?
We received a letter from ODNR,
Yeah.
and there is a May inspection date.
I can't
Or
remember.
there's an inspection date coming up.
Well, this is the inspection from October 23rd, 2013, and it came right from ODNR.
And they do that every 5 years, and so they
Yeah.
notify us that it's our 5 years. And I would tell you that of the things that they recommended that we do from the 2013.
Wasn't ever done.
So, I don't expect the 2018 to be more favorable.
No, so,
False to reason.
so, I just wanted to I just wanted to bring that to light. And I meant to copy this, do you have it? Because Donnie signed it, Fox, or they sent it to Don. I guess he didn't sign it.
I mean, if you would have let me know this yesterday or earlier, I could have had all that information for you.
No, I met with the park district, Josh out there, and he said as it's in this condition, they don't really want to mess with it, because even if they were to do something out there that they, something happened that we decided we wanted to get rid of it because we couldn't afford it, then they would be left out. So they don't want to put any effort into it as long as the dam.
You have a potential buyer out there for this, will buy it as is. And so you may find out there's more potential buyers. So,
I guess, is that the thing, you sell it as is?
Yeah, you just put it out for bid. You probably want some stipulations on it, you know, that, but yeah, you can just put it out to bid. And you reserve the right to reject any bids, any or all bids as well, in case you don't.
But it would have to go out to bid.
Yes, right.
I mean, we recommended last year that we, you know, can strongly consider selling it. We're not using the water anymore. We'll never use the water anymore.
Well, in fact, we were
told we
ordered
could.
to disconnect from our system.
And this is, yeah, so it's sitting there and, you know, it's about to cost the taxpayers some money unless we can, you know, find a better use. I think Mr. Murphy's use was exciting. I thought it was gonna be a nice benefit for the community. You know, never did figure out a price, but, you know, I think it was something you should strongly consider. So I think it's somebody's gonna put some money into it, so.
I'll say, I don't want to take on real estate in exchange for it.
Yeah.
As in a certain building at the northwest corner of
I don't
Washington Square.
think anybody wants to take on another building.
No. But I also think that if we did anything, we need to send a letter out to the adjoining property owners, because it just, you know, it does affect them. I do know a house just to the east of it. I know the owner, and, you know, it's a really nice view from their house, and if that gets sold privately, and I don't know where their property ends, and you know, they would like to have input, so.
Maybe you're better.
Well, they could be. But, you know, that's just my opinion.
Okay, well, I had just received that this last week.
Mr. Chairman, do you want me to have Mr. Murphy come back and address the committee again?
Well, I appreciate what he did and what he said he wanted to do with it, but what it all comes down to is we would have to put it out for bid, you know. And I would think we would want kind of an idea of what it's worth, I guess.
And that's a difficult thing. We've looked at some options to try to acquire some, you know, value. And, you know, we're having some difficulty trying to find anybody who can give us some. People don't sell reservoirs every day. And reservoirs with bad dams come up even less often. So, yeah, you know, that's a tough call. There's not a lot of land. I mean, you know, there's some wooded areas and stuff. But there's a lot of road down here. It's a difficult thing.
Make a beautiful lot for a house.
Like these.
I guess that's all I have. So,
Chairman,
yes,
question.
okay.
What is the financial burden of the Pines Reservoir on the city right now?
I think just making the repairs to the dam that the ODNR is requesting.
And also, it's also the upkeep of the trash removal and maintaining.
Couches thrown out there every other week.
Well, and that's why we were looking at the Park District, but they're just not comfortable with taking it on as it is, and then at some point, we decide as the city that, you know, hey, we can't fix this, and we have to sell it, and then whatever they've done, if they've put in paths or put in canoeing or something like that, then they're just out of that, you know.
I was just wondering if the financial burden was more of a problem for the city than it would be for the benefit of the residents for its use as a recreational.
How many people actually go out there? I haven't been out there for 35 years.
Well,
I mean, actually, in the parking lot.
I have very few times, but not very often myself.
We do have,
But I do know others that do.
I do remember those 5 gentlemen coming in here.
They were
So,
here.
yeah.
Okay, I got, no, Kevin knows.
Did they express any opinion one way or the other if the dam were to be repaired? And of course, we don't know what the extent of the repairs would cost, but if it were repaired, could they then at that point have interest in the property?
Yes, they would,
Okay.
and he even said he would send people out to help with that, which a lot of it was cutting the trees out of the embankment and things like that. He said he could even spare people to do that, but the biggest thing was there had to be an inundation plan. Basically, if the dam, something happened, where's the water gonna go? And what happens, and he had talked to the lady and said that it's not 100-year flood, it's 1,000-year flood. That if it's the worst flood in 1,000 years, where's this water gonna go? So he said that she said that would cost about $50,000 for that is what she thought. So
To put a plan together.
to put that plan together. So I don't know if that's something
Okay.
If it wasn't for the dam, it'd be an easy cleanup. So it's just cleaning up brush and moving trees and planting grass. It's just that dam's the problem.
Yeah. So anything else? Okay, with that, I'm going to adjourn the public lands and buildings at 7:41. I'm going to open it for public participation, which we haven't opened. Any other public participation? Yes.
Why would the tower agreement not be in your guys' hands, be in administration's hands? Isn't that why we voted on you guys to represent the city? I mean, wouldn't that be the council's decision if you're gonna terminate an agreement?
Right, but it's like this. We don't meet and say, it's time to mow the park. It's time to, you know.
What's it have to do with leasing the space? Up in Berea, there's a water tower up there. It's got antennas all the way around it that they've leased out to companies. What's the issue here? Is it because Kurt ran against you? Because that's sure what it looks like.
No, that's not it.
Dale.
It's an administrative job, you know. There's things that we do, we make the laws, they
Run the city.
enforce them and.
Everybody has different jobs. In our mayor council form of government, we have an administration, we have a service director.
I certainly don't want the mayor making the laws, okay? Nothing personal, but that's our job,
that's
you know?
essentially, you're giving the administration power.
Not for
to
the
cancel
agreement,
contract right away.
just to terminate. If he does not meet those guidelines, then it's up.
What's the guidelines? I mean,
What?
Mr. Ratliff said, failure to pay rent.
That was just one.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Why would we terminate that? We're making,
What?
I just said we
Why-
need
why do
money
you
for the
have-
general fund,
why would you
Dale.
have that?
We're getting $35 a month. I mean, every dollar is important. Why would we terminate that?
Why wouldn't you put it in the council's hands though? What's the problem with putting it in the council's hands? $35 a month is not a whole lot of money.
No, here's the thing. Okay, if something happens, then we have to have a meeting, then we have to have another meeting, and then, by then, it's just out of there. Okay.
I guess this was the, because I asked that question. And it was explained to me that, I guess heaven forbid, and I'm not saying that Mr. Finkhauser would do this, but heaven forbid, he starts broadcasting child pornography at the end of this evening. We don't have enough time to shut him off, whereas the administration can shut him off right now. It would take us 2 days, a couple days, a week to be able to shut him
Right.
off, and at that point in time, he would have broadcasted child pornography for a week. That's the reason why.
In that case, it becomes a legal issue. Which the
That's
police
understandable,
department
but
would
we
go
can't
shut it
allow
down
that
right
legal issue to
away.
go.
Hopefully, the police department would go shut it down right away if it's being broadcast.
But I think his point is a little over the top, but there are other things that, maybe it's interfering with something.
I guess I don't understand why.
I mean,
not the
it's
council.
just the checks and balances, okay,
There's no
They
checks
have
and
a job.
balances if the council's not voting on it.
That's a bit of a
There's no
misnomer.
checks and balances if the council's not voting
That's a bit
on
of
what
a
the
mis-
administration's doing.
That's a bit of a misnomer, because council just voted to extend this agreement, to give him the agreement.
Correct, but the agreement also says that the administration can cancel it immediately.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
No, it does not.
6
You can
months.
read it when we get out here, you can read a copy of it. It's public document, we can't hide it from you. If you need it, request a document, they will get it to you and you can read it. There's nothing in there stating that they're not gonna terminate him on the 19th.
But if we did not pass this, they could have terminated him on the
You're
next.
certain.
With no extent, with no 6-month notice.
It's just certain local companies. That's all you, I mean, there's not too many people.
Come on, Dale. I've known you a long time. You're accusing me of doing something.
I'm
You know
not
better than I
accusing you, I'm
would
just
do.
saying,
You know,
say something happens to you, Mayor, that somebody else has to step in and somebody else does it.
Well, heaven forbid somebody would be vindictive against somebody that they, that they don't agree with. And, you gotta put more faith in people than that.
If I could just, I understand what your question is. If, let's just use a what, if the administration terminated it, at that point, I think council then, because our job is to make the laws, we could then find a way, all right, to make sure things are done right. If something was done, and is what you're saying was done wrong. So let that help you sleep
At
better.
that point, the guy's business went down the drain.
No, it hasn't, he had 6 months. What
I'm
we did
saying,
was give him 6
by
months.
the time council got a chance,
Well, no, if he's given notice from the administration, it's 6 months. We can take care of it in 6 months.
That's part of the
You have to take
reason
care of the ambulance
that's part of the
contract.
reason I asked for the 6 months, is,
we haven't taken care of the ambulance contract in 3 years.
No.
You can't take care of that in 6 months, I'm sure.
You appreciate it coming forward.
any other?
Finish up?
Yes. Oh, yes. I did have it, okay. Okay,
So
I
moved.
ask for a motion, okay, thanks.
Second.
Second. And we will adjourn at 7:47. All right.